thanks for joining us. I'm Mitchell Ringos. At around 9:20 this morning, Thunder Bay Fire Rescue crews responded to a house fire on the 100 block of Peter Street, where they observed a large volume of smoke at the scene. It was quickly confirmed that the lone occupant was out of the building and exterior suppression efforts were initiated, bringing the fire under control. The resident was treated at the scene by paramedics for smoke inhalation, and the building sustained smoke and structural damage. The cause is under investigation, and TBFR says keeping up-to-date smoke alarms can save lives. Well, people across Ukraine awoke from a night of jubilant celebrations after a major victory. As Ukrainian officials say, they are now overseeing stabilization measures around Kherson to make sure it is safe, as well as documenting evidence of possible war crimes. CTV's Vanessa Lee has the latest.
In the newly liberated city of Kherson, Ukrainian soldiers are being greeted with a hero's welcome. Amazing. I've never felt better. Our boys are everything to us. We waited for them for a long time. It was terrifying, she says. The Russian retreat marks one of the biggest setbacks for Moscow since the start of the war. People in the southern port city are finally free after 8 brutal months. President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russian forces destroyed critical infrastructure before fleeing: communications networks, water supplies, heat, and electricity. Authorities are working on making the regional capital livable again. They're rebuilding and restoring services, along with demining the city. Ukraine's foreign minister says they are winning battles on the ground, but the war continues. At the Leaders' Summit in Phnom Penh, Dmytro Kuleba called on Southeast Asian countries to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
When we enter a city liberated from Russian army, we find torture rooms and mass graves with civilians tortured and murdered by Russian army in the course of the occupation of these territories.
As Ukrainians celebrate Kherson's freedom, they know there is still much uncertainty ahead. 70% of the region remains under Russian control. Vanessa Lee, CTV News, Montreal.
Local MP Patty Hajdu spoke about her government's recently released fall economic statement, and according to her, it'll assist those who need it most. The fall economic statement was released last week by the federal Liberals' Deputy Premier and Minister of Finance, Chrystia Freeland. The Liberals are calling it a way of building an economy that works for everyone. Hajdu echoed these claims while highlighting the elimination of interest on student loans as an important way of making life more affordable for Canadians.
That sometimes people who are living in low-income situations and who are in generational low-income situations are afraid to take on debt for logical reasons. There's a real anxiety about being able to pay it back. And so this hopefully will give people the confidence that if they do need to access loans to access post-secondary education, that at least it's in an affordable way and it's not going to bury them in debt as the years accumulate.
The fall economic statement projects a federal deficit of $36.4 billion, nearly $20 billion improvement over predictions in April of this year. Sioux Lookout will be adding security cameras in some parts of town, thanks in part to a grant from the province. The town already has a CCTV program. The $48,000 grant will cover half the project cost for installation of new cameras in the downtown and waterfront areas of Sioux Lookout.
And what we're doing is really filling in some gaps, and people might not realize it, but there's quite a few CCTV cameras around. Many private businesses have cameras, and the municipality on various of our buildings in the downtown core has cameras already. And they inform the police in investigations.
The grant is one of 20 given out in a recent $1.8 million spending announcement from the Ford government. Dryden is also receiving $70,000 for their CCTV program. As a way to tackle the abuse of young hockey officials, Hockey Northwestern Ontario is implementing the Green Armband Initiative. All on-ice officials under the age of 18 will wear a green band on their left arm to identify them as minors to team staff, players, spectators, and parents. Jessica Clement has the details.
Over 25% of all Hockey Northwestern Ontario officials are under the age of 18 and work a large portion of minor hockey games in the branch. However, officiating numbers have continued to drop all over Canada over the past decade. 1 out of 3 officials drop out after their first year, and Brian Graham, Director of Officiating with HNO, says it's because of the verbal abuse.
We do have some officials that stick with it for 2 or 3 years, and usually if they bow out of the program at that point, it's for the same reason. So, we do have some officials that work their way through it and continue on, but we're losing way too many of them for that reason. So, we're at a point where it's not a crisis, but when you look at the crystal ball down the road, if there are no officials to referee the games, then there will be no games.
The objective of the Green Armband program is to reduce harassment and abuse by clearly identifying the young officiates as minors and to protect their psychological and physical safety at the arena. Graham says officiating can be a positive and rewarding experience for adolescents and wants to encourage young people to get involved.
I think this program, when the people in the building, whether they're parents or spectators in general, and the coaches and the players themselves, when they notice that a young official is out there identified with the green armband on, that they'll think twice about doing it. That's going to be the real benefit of this program. And hopefully we don't get to the point where we have to stop games to remove parents for being too vocal with their opinion about how the game is being officiated.
Graham says he thinks the program will play a big part in bringing officiating numbers back up. Jessica Clement, TBT News.
A Thunder Bay woman whose business provides camouflage tattoos for people with visible scars is providing her services free of charge to military veterans this month as her contribution to Remembrance Day. Alodi Mayor says she wanted to show her gratitude to veterans and those currently serving.
I said I need to do something for the camouflage industry and basically just help people, right? Because a lot of people are going through trauma and they're suffering in silence. So that's what touched my heart, and that's why I wanted to go ahead with the service.
Mayor Galau's business, Ageless Aesthetic Studio, started out by offering permanent makeup for people who have lost their eyebrows due to burns or medical issues. She then got into paramedical restorative pigmentation. The procedure helped people who struggle mentally with seeing their scars. This military vet, who wished to remain anonymous, is receiving free sessions from Mayor Galau.
They have an injury on the hip area, so I will be camouflaging the scar that's from the hip injury. I'm aiming for it to almost be seamlessly undetectable, so the color that I've matched looks like it's going to blend in really well to a point where it's not going to affect them to think about that they have that injury or that scarring.
The service will be free for military veterans until November 21st. Mayor Galau is hoping to help up to half a dozen people during that time. An Atikokan woman who had to have her legs amputated just below the knees in 2015 is getting ready to compete in a biathlon in Florida next weekend. Colleen Torbiak has spent the past 18 weeks training hard for the event, which involves cycling and kayaking.
I got to cross that finish line, and I know it's going to happen. I'm going to be doing it whether I'm crawling across it or not, but I will get across that finish line. And then I would have just proved myself that there is nothing that can stop me. Nothing.
7 years ago, Torbiak suffered severe frostbite after a suicide attempt in the bitter cold. In the years since her double amputation, she's rehabilitated herself both mentally and physically to the point of challenging herself to attempt 120 miles of kayaking and bicycling from Key West to Key Largo, Florida. Thanks to the new prosthetic legs that she got in June, the 45-year-old has progressed tremendously in her training, and she's poised to find out just how far she can push herself.
I would say what's motivating me to do this is just to see if I can do it. If I can do 120 miles in 3 days on prosthetic legs, then I can't even imagine what my next goal is going to be. I don't even know what my next goal is going to be. Running, I guess. Getting back into running.
Torbiak will be competing against 26 other participants when she takes part in the biathlon next Friday to Sunday. A Sudbury company called Raven Rising Global Indigenous Chocolates is among 5 winners named by Canada Post in a national program. The program celebrates small business success stories and accomplishments from across Canada, with winners getting a $20,000 package. CTV's Amanda Hicks has more.
I was adopted into a great family.
Canada Post says it was Chef Tammy Mackey's captivating story that led her business to national recognition.
It's so inspiring, and knowing that there's so many Canadians out there, and not just in Canada, globally, you know, Chef Tammy's story was just very touching.
Mackey was adopted into a Finnish family, later discovering she was a part of the 60s Scoop, a time in Canadian history when Indigenous children were removed from their families.
I wondered about things a lot, right? Like my family, and I wondered why my mother never wanted me, and it hurt me.
Channeling her passion for baking into art and wanting to better understand her roots, her chocolates are handcrafted using Indigenous ingredients.
It's always been my happy place, baking and in the kitchen. But back then it wasn't really considered like a career choice, like being a chef, right?
And it's really about being there as far as Canadians and making sure that we have that diversity and inclusion, and really digging a little bit deeper than the surface of the business. We want to know about the owners, their story, how they came about, and where the businesses come from.
Mackey operated Raven Rising strictly as an e-commerce platform until opening this storefront in September of this year, saying she felt the desire to create from the moment she set foot inside.
This place was like zen from the minute I walked in the door, and it just made me want to create.
Mackey says for now the plans are to extend store hours as we head into the holiday season. As for long term, she hopes she can one day open up a bigger shop to continue making edible art. Amanda Hicks, CTV News, Sudbury.
And we're now joined by sports anchor Kurt Black. Now, plenty of people heading out to the stadium recently to see the Thunderwolves, hoping to get a win.
Yeah, and hey, they looked pretty good at the beginning of the season, but they've fallen on a little bit of tough times as of late. Thunderwolves looking to avoid their 5th straight loss last night. We'll have those highlights right after the break.